him as he unrolls the scroll is from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to announce release to the captives and recovering the sight to the blind, to set at liberty to those who have been, which one was come. He handed it back to the officer. Jesus said, "Today the scripture has been fulfilled." They thought he was explain what this all meant. And at first, and then the emotion in the synagogue came to that they came and they grabbed him. They lifted him off of his seat and he took him out of the synagogue. The city was built on a road down. What on earth did Jesus say that made them so upset? Jesus told them that had received God's grace. That anyone who received God was chosen by God. Grace was meant for them, the people of Israel, not the outsiders, not the Gentiles. History tells us humanity chooses to get grace. It's not grace. It's not God. It's simply human entitlement. And Jesus is in his synagogue today telling his family, telling his neighbors from his own child, favor with all. And their emotional switch happened so quickly that they took him to that cliff. They wanted to silence inclusive against them, the elect. All of this today, synagogue, that when Jesus goes with them, as he always willingly, simply slips away. Limited grace is not of God. Limited inclusion is not of God. Limited anything is not of God. For God is of abundance. God is of infinity. God is limitless. Because God's grace is wider than the sea. As grace belongs to God, then what do we do to share in this goodness of who God is? Paul's letter to the Corinthians today tells us plainly we use love. We give love. We live in love. It's in those opening words that if we speak in the tongues of mortals, of angels, but do not have love, I'm simply a gong or a clanging cymbal. And as one scholar explains, Paul begins insisting that it is love that gives meaning and the appropriate flavor to all of our Christian living. No matter what we do in this world in which we live together, if it lacks love, it lacks God. In that abundance of God's love, we wait for the world to react. For the world cannot hold any control on God because God is of pure love. And therefore, the world will always be limited. We will always be limited, finding either ourselves or those around us simply clamoring. And whether it's the squeakiest wheel or the loudest gong, that tends to be where our attention goes. And yet love patiently waits to be heard. It waits in the words and actions of those who hold on to that true value of God's grace, the greatest gift of all. Love calmly waits to be shared, because when love is shared, joy is discovered. On this Super Bowl Sunday, we might think of it this way. True joy is not if our team wins, because that means that another team has to lose. It's in the arrival of Jesus that God is clear that there are no teams, there are no sides, and that there's this promise that we can experience joy over and over again in our lives when we realize that the gift has been given to all. But this gift is painfully difficult work. It's not work where we can simply look at numbers or look at statistics, but it's work that challenges us deep to our core to stretch beyond all doubt what can be accomplished through us with God's help. And as we begin to stretch, we find that we feel limited. What if my faith is not strong enough? What if my hope is doubtful? As Paul tells those in Corinth, of faith, hope, and love, love is the greatest. Love is that foundational course which brought Jesus into the world so that we could actually know God. Jesus showed us God by loving over and over again. And if we look at much of the conversation between Jesus and even just his own disciples, that love is tough. It's tough to hear, and it's even tougher to give. Yet we can cringe at today's gospel because they can't hear the good news of Jesus even in his own town. They quickly become angry. They quickly seek a quick fix to find their scapegoat to take to the cliff and to get rid of. But love is patient. We cannot forget the fact that when Jesus came to his hometown today, everyone was excited. They had heard about all the great healing that he had been doing. They were proud of him, and those miracle stories touched on all of their hearts. Everyone can get excited. Everyone can be joyful when healing has taken place. They think he's a prophet. And he knows that buildings and monuments are named after only after they have died. He reminds them that prophets, in their own course of life, struggled because the words in which they shared of God rubbed people the wrong way, agitated those who heard it, and waited for them to simply go away. That's why Paul tells this young church, there will be prophets, there will be geniuses, there will be those who can interpret tongues. They will simply come and go, but that Christ continues to live on in us. We continue to discover who God is by following Jesus and his teachings, by looking for Christ in one another. Doing this, the story continues on. This young church in Corinth had become noisy. They had begun to turn against each other. They started to miss God's message. Even this young church had felt that they were in the place that they were meant to be, and there was no more room to grow. And so they acted out even against their own family members when they were pushed to go beyond their own complacency. Paul and Jesus remind us this. We don't have to have a perfect faith to live together. We don't have to be in this mindset where there are no doubts that creep in. But we understand in God's goodness and God's grace that joy is always discovered through the hard work that we endure together by loving each other courageously. And when we love each other courageously, it reminds us of this promise to love beyond ourselves, that even greater joy is found. We do not get to choose. We just do that hard work of loving wider and wider as the sea. God gives us grace in those good fruits. God gives us the discovery of where we go next in God's unfolding story. Amen.